This is Nelson, and Nelson is 24. He's smart, driven, and has his whole life ahead of him. But Nelson has a problem. All of his life he has lived in a country ruled by something called Apartheid, which is a system where a white minority controls the entire country and decides where black people can live, where they can go, and what they can or can't do. It's like racism, but racism on steroids. If you somehow never heard about Nelson Mandela and the part he played towards the end of apartheid rule, this is that story. So, Nelson grows up in South Africa where a white minority controls everything and black South Africans are pushed to the margins. There are parts of his own country he can't go to and parts where he needs to carry a pass just to visit. And it gets worse because it's literally a crime for a black person to date or marry a white person, let alone have kids with them. It is an offense that can land you in prison. But Nelson is tired of living like this. So, together with his friends, he decides to do something. He and his friends organize meetings and rallies. He's part of a group called the African National Congress, the ANC. And they fight with words, petitions, and peaceful protests. But of course, this doesn't work. And honestly, it was never going to work. Because the people they're protesting against are the same people who control the police, the courts, and the army. Now, no story is complete without a villain. So let me introduce you to this guy. His name is P.W. Botha. And P.W. is a really bad guy. He's the head of the white minority government. He didn't start apartheid, but he's the current face of it, and he's cunning and brutal in equal measure. Here's what makes him truly dangerous. He doesn't just use white people to enforce apartheid. He recruits black police officers to checkmate other black people, breeding ethnic tensions on purpose. You know, the usual divide and conquer. And it works because now you don't just have white officers beating black citizens, you have black officers doing it too. And these officers are brutal. They chase, beat up, and lock up their fellow South Africans because, well, they have a bit of authority from the white guys, so they continue. Nelson is arrested multiple times, beaten, banned, and followed everywhere. His friends suffer the same fate too. Now, most people at this point would give up. You've tried peace, you've tried dialogue, you've tried the courts, and nothing has worked. So, what do? Well, if you're Nelson, you fight back harder. And so, by 1961, he helps form a group called Umkhonto weSizwe, which translates to Spear of the Nation. This gives the ANC an armed wing. Their mission is simple: sabotage the white government. So, they blow up power stations, military posts, government offices, anything that keeps the machine running. And for a while, it works. The government is rattled. Explosions go off across the country. The regime that thought it was untouchable suddenly has to look over its shoulder. But the thing about fighting the government is, the government always fights back harder. In 1962, Nelson is arrested. He is kept in detention for 2 years. And then in 1964, he faces the Rivonia trial, where together with other anti-apartheid leaders, he is charged with 4 counts of sabotage and 1 count of conspiracy to overthrow the government. He stands in court facing the death penalty. The government wants to execute him and make an example out of him. And what does Nelson do? He gives a speech. He delivers words that shake not just the courtroom, but the entire world. I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an idea which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, my Lord, it is an idea for which I am prepared to die. Now, I don't know if it's because of the speech, maybe the judge is moved, maybe international pressure plays a role, but whatever the reason, to everyone's shock and surprise, the judge spares his life. Instead, he gives him a sentence of life imprisonment. And so begins Nelson's long, dark night. He is locked away on Robben Island where he breaks rocks under the sun. His cell is tiny, about the size of a bathroom. His food is scarce, and guards try to break and humiliate him at every turn. But here's the thing about Nelson Mandela. The man simply refuses to break. From his cell, he writes letters that provoke and inspire people on the outside. Year after year, he becomes more than a prisoner. He becomes a symbol and a face for the struggle. But while Nelson sits behind bars, the struggle outside is far from quiet. June 16th, 1976, Soweto. Thousands of school children march through the streets refusing to be taught in Afrikaans, the language of their oppressors. Imagine you're a kid and the government forces you to learn science, maths, and history in a language you barely understand, while English, the international language which is widely understood, is deliberately sidelined. These kids say no. They walk out of classrooms singing freedom songs, fists raised in the air, and then the police opened fire on children. At least 176 students are killed that day, though some people say the number is far higher. And then one photograph changes everything. The image of young Hector Peterson's lifeless body carried by another student, his sister running beside them in horror, spreads across the world. This uprising becomes a turning point. The blood of these children adds fuel to the resistance. But back to Nelson. Eventually, he is moved from Robben Island to Portsmouth Prison, and finally to Victor Verster Prison. By the 1980s, apartheid begins to crack. International pressure builds. Sanctions hit. More protests explode across South Africa. Nelson's name is everywhere, on posters, in songs, in chants on every continent. The government tries everything. They try to make deals, they try to silence him, and then they try something desperate. They offer him freedom. But there's a catch. He has to renounce the struggle. He has to publicly say that the fight is over and that he accepts the system. But of course, Nelson refuses, and the world keeps chanting, "Free Nelson Mandela! Free Nelson Mandela!" And then the story turns. February 11th, 1990. The gates of Victor Verster Prison swing open, and Nelson Mandela walks out hand in hand with his wife Winnie. Fist raised, head held high. 27 years. That's how long they kept him locked away. He walked in as a young activist aged 44. He walked out as a 71-year-old statesman. But at the sight of him, the world erupts. Crowds dance in Soweto, flags wave in cities across the globe. The man who was supposed to rot in jail is free. 4 years later, in 1994, Nelson Mandela casts his vote in South Africa's first free and democratic election and becomes the country's first black president. He serves one term and steps down in 1999. He could have held on to power, but he doesn't. He understands that power is not meant to be kept forever, but used and passed on. He passes away on the 5th of December 2013 at the age of 95, leaving behind a legacy that South Africa and the world at large will never forget. This was a really beautiful story, and if you enjoyed it and would want to see more like it, then please like, share, and subscribe for more.